bundle of nerves, our anxiety epidemic is made possible by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield.
For more than 75 years, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield has been committed to creating stronger, healthier communities through corporate grants, sponsorships, and program support. Learn more at highmark.com/community impact.
My anxiety started when I was around the age 26, and it started like a bang.
It almost feels like how you would think a heart attack would feel.
More Americans than ever live with anxiety disorders, yet fewer than a third of those people seek treatment.
There's a lot of shame or embarrassment that happens in patients that suffer from anxiety disorders, even though they're the most common psychiatric condition and they're very treatable.
I never really knew it was anxiety. I kept that thought that I was a weak man.
You can't just snap out of it. You can't just stop.
What causes everyday worries to spin out of control? Over the next half hour, meet professionals who offer help and people who have experienced hope.
What's important to know is there is help out there, that people aren't alone.
It just happened to hit me one day out of the clear blue sky. Feeling doom, like he was going to wreck, have a heart attack.
It started in 1975. Chuck Helmstetter was driving to work, and nothing was different that day, but everything was about to change.
The farther I drove, the more upset I got. Something bad's going to happen to me, and I'm not going to be able to get back to my house or where I came from.
Chuck turned around and drove home. But the next day, and for months afterward, every car trip set off the same terrifying response.
Many days I'd go to work crying. I'd leave the house here. I had tears in my eyes.
Like 40 million Americans today, Chuck has an anxiety disorder, and panic attacks are part of that. The attacks got so bad that he couldn't leave his home, so he couldn't hold a job. He started his own business as a construction estimator and worked out of his basement. Business is good, but Chuck said that's the only silver lining to come out of a cloud that's hung over his head for the past 40 years.
A panic attack will actually make you so tired you'll go to sleep. It's like doing a day's work. If you know that you're having them and you want to learn to live with them, you got to seek medical help. You got to.
For decades, Chuck saw doctors and tried antidepressant pills, but it wasn't until 2014 that he started seeing psychiatrist Alicia Kaplan. She specializes in anxiety disorders.
Anxiety is necessary in our lives so that we can respond to an actual threat or danger or keep us on our toes and focused.
But for people with anxiety disorders, worrying spirals out of control, and every situation seems like it's life or death. It's called thought distortion.
What can be helpful is starting to look at our thoughts like a scientist and examine their evidence. It takes practice. This isn't something that happens overnight. We can't change our thinking that's been ingrained with us all these years. The first step is identifying them, and it makes us feel that this is a catastrophe.
Right. I'm not going to get to either appointment. I'm going to wind up in the hospital.
It usually starts with a what if, right?
My whole life is like what if.
Your nervous system is overactivated.
This type of treatment is called cognitive behavioral therapy. Talking through the worry helps an anxious person recognize an irrational fear. Therapy helped Chuck replace those irrational fears with a more reasonable thought.
The most probable thing is you call the guy and say, hey, I'm on my way, I've had a little bit of a problem. And most people are compassionate.
That's true.
Multiple studies show cognitive behavioral therapy has the highest success rate for treating anxiety. And that's crucial because there's more at stake than gaining peace of mind. Mental anguish can cause physical symptoms.
What happens is that our brain and our body doesn't know the difference. It responds the same way. So that when we're under stress, we have our sympathetic nervous system or fight or flight response go off.
According to the American Academy of Family Physicians, up to 2/3 of all office visits to family doctors are for stress-related symptoms. And healthcare costs top $22 billion each year as people seek medical treatment for physical problems and pain that are really the result of anxiety.
Some of the most common physical symptoms that are associated with anxiety disorders can be palpitations, shortness of breath, associated conditions such as irritable bowel syndrome, and also headaches and backaches, insomnia.
To tame anxiety's physical symptoms, therapy can also include relaxation training.
What I try and do is the thought that's bothering me, I imagine it at the top of my head, and it's right here. So when I start my breathing, as I breathe 1, 2, 3 times, I feel it going down, leaving my body, just like leave everything out of my mind and see, like I'll just shut my eyes and see if I can forget about what it is that has to be done or what I'm worried about. Since I got treatment, I feel better about myself. If I wouldn't have went to the doctor, I would probably today be sitting in a house on disability. I don't think I could have got over it myself.
There's a lot of shame or embarrassment that happens in patients that suffer from anxiety disorders. What's important to know is that a lot of people suffer from anxiety. It's very treatable, and there is help out there. People aren't alone.
Just wanna calm down, cause it's loud in my mind, it's hurting my soul. Too much stress on my heart, life in school, I think I'm falling apart, it's crazy.
I'd say music was there for the ride.
Someone to save me, just looking for someone to lay in.
I use this analogy a lot. It was like I opened up my mind and poured out everything that I was thinking about. So, like once everything is out of my mind, I felt calm. And that's why I kept coming back to music, because like to an anxious person, calm is like gold, you know?
Man, relief is all I'm wanting. So I just hold on.
Kai Roberts is the kind of guy you'd probably describe as driven. Driven to be the best with his music, driven to be the best with his grades. And when he entered prestigious Carnegie Mellon University as a mechanical engineering major, driven to be the best of the best.
During my sophomore year, I started like feeling this sensation. It was like a kind of a tightness in my chest. It was like a tightness. I thought it was ambition.
But it wasn't ambition. It was anxiety, one of the most common mental health problems on college campuses today.
During that summer, I started having panic attacks. It almost feels like how you would think a heart attack would feel. I basically cut myself off from people just because I didn't want people to see me anxious or see me like this or think I'm crazy. That was one of the foremost worries in my mind. It was like, I don't want people to think I'm crazy.
By the beginning of Kai's junior year, his anxiety hit the tipping point.
I would obsess with the word suicide. Like I would see the word suicide like as an image in my mind. I was afraid of like knives. I was afraid of like windows. I was afraid of the side of buildings. It was bad.
So he finally confided in his mother.
She was alarmed, and she basically said, you know, you're coming home for a leave of absence. Like, I'm picking you up right now.
He took a semester off from college, got help from mental health professionals, and in his spare time, Kai filled tablet after tablet writing about his feelings.
I would write stories about what inspired my anxiety. it did become the medicine.
Finals week and that stress is on. Final is 40%. Studying a lesson. Question. Hands up like we're gonna celebrate.
Over the next few months, those stories turned into lyrics.
Can't recognize the lows from the highs.
And the lyrics turned into songs. Songs with titles like About Those Grades and Stressed Out.
This anxiety, it got me always on the edge. I feel like a lot of people feel like this, but just don't want to talk about it. I took it as a mission. You know, like people need to hear what mental health is. People need to hear how it feels, how to overcome it.
Kai decided to turn the songs into an album, and he called it Carnegie Cafe.
And I would just give them out for free, you know, just like I wanted to, in my mind, I really wanted to slide it under like every student's door.
He returned to the school the following semester, and now that he's graduated from CMU, Kai returns to the campus to give concerts. All the while spreading the message to open up about mental illness.
When it was time to release Carnegie Cafe, I wasn't afraid because I've been to the place where I was afraid all the time.
But tonight, I'ma shine in the moonlight. Made moves like Michael Jackson, so it's time for action. I go. Graduated to a party bus. I'm going to college. I had enough.
After being in such a low place, I felt like elevating others. And I felt like elevating myself.
We're gonna celebrate.
I know how to live with it now, and I know how to move that energy into more positive directions, and I know how to let the anxiety work for me now.
What it feels like in your head to have the anxiety, I like to think of like an auctioneer who's like rapid fire speaking.
I got a $100 bid. Thank you, sir.
But he's also not really making sense. It's just talking really fast, and that's what the thoughts can sometimes feel like. If you kind of think about what it's like if you're running late for something really important and you know what that physical sensation is like to have to rush around and imagine being in that state all the time. And it's something you can't really control, and that's the hard thing, is you can't just snap out of it. You can't just stop. I think it is hard for people who don't have these illnesses to really relate to what they feel like, because externally you can look at me and think I look fine and that there's nothing wrong with me.
Racing thoughts and excessive worry were not always a part of Jennifer Sikura's life.
My anxiety started when I was around the age 26, and it started like a bang. At the time, I felt like there was something wrong with me personally. It took a while to get there, to realize this was a health problem. Just like any other chronic illness, you have to take care of it.
Jennifer got help from mental health professionals who diagnosed her with panic attacks and generalized anxiety disorder. 17 years later, she thinks of her treatment as a three-legged stool. The first two legs are psychotherapy and medication.
And the third has been various forms of physical being, such as meditation, yoga, exercise, and practicing mindfulness.
The official term is integrated medicine. It combines traditional medical treatments with alternative approaches that are backed up by science. One of them is mindfulness. It's a type of meditation meant to develop an increased awareness of the present moment, and it's been clinically proven to reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain.
It's been probably the single most thing for me that has helped. Mindfulness is about getting rid of all that external noise. For example, I'll take a hot cup of really good herbal tea out into my sun porch, and I'll just focus on the warmth of the cup, the smell of the tea, the warmth of the liquid as it goes into my mouth, and just really pay attention to that whole experience. Really nice thing about mindfulness practice is it doesn't take a huge time investment. For example, when I'm drinking my tea, I might just take 5 to 10 minutes to really enjoy that, and that might be all I need to kind of put me on a good path for the day.
Jennifer also enjoys yoga.
Yoga is just a great way to stretch and pay attention to the body and really kind of be synced with your body and get focused on something different. My thoughts aren't running loose and running rampant. And I love my dog. It's interesting, I live in a neighborhood where everybody here has electric fences for their dogs. We actually have deliberately not gotten one for ours so that I'm forced to exercise him. I'm forced to go for a walk.
And Jennifer power walks around her neighborhood.
For me, the physical activity side of it helps to drain off some of that energy that's produced by being in that generalized anxiety state. My husband will often notice when I'm feeling anxious and when I'm having one of those days, and he'll tell me to go for a run or go for a power walk.
It's good advice. According to research cited by the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, exercise may improve mental health by helping people cope better with stress. It decreases tension, stabilizes mood, and improves sleep.
It doesn't 100% solve it, but it definitely is a big contributor to making me feel better. It helps you kind of focus in on something else other than what's keeping that anxiety engine humming. With yoga or exercise or mindfulness, what I feel afterwards is more focused. Living well with this absolutely can be done. You know, today I travel, I entertain, I do all kinds of things. In times when I was not feeling well, a lot of those things would have been off the table. I think that the more that we talk about this as a culture, the more people will start to get treatment for it, get better. The sense of hope comes from taking care of your illness and living well with it.
I think it started back when I was 5 years old. I was in a pageant and I was so overwhelmed and I did not like the spotlight. You know, that's when I started feeling very, very anxious. And I think from then on, it manifested itself in different ways as I grew up. Yeah, when I was 11 years old, I discovered alcohol. I felt invincible. You know, I finally felt like I was a normal man. You can be a man at 11. I realized that I had found my magic pill.
Jeff Fitzwilliam wouldn't be diagnosed for decades, but he suffered from a social anxiety disorder. It's an overwhelming fear of not fitting in and worrying people will find you inferior in social interactions. Nearly 30% of people with social anxiety disorder also meet the criteria for drug and alcohol abuse. They use it to ease the stress of social situations. Doctors call it self-medicating.
My formative years, you know, pretty much the only thing I learned to do was to self-medicate.
Fueled by alcohol, Jeff found it easier to approach people, especially women.
They had a fantasy about jet pilots. I would tell them that I was in the Air Force and being trained to fly an SR-71 Blackbird. Women like their garbage man. I was a garbage man. So I was basically a drug-addled and alcohol-induced chameleon. And I still held on to this feeling that without the alcohol, I was still that inferior, scared little boy.
Over the years, Jeff drifted from job to job, got married and divorced, and ended up with sole custody of his children, even though alcohol and drugs still ruled his life. He was in his late 40s when he had a life-changing moment.
Having anxiety and having such low self-esteem, I never really looked myself in the eyes in the mirror I was always watching where I was shaving, or watching my teeth as I brushed them. I never really saw looked myself in the eyes, but this day I did. I could look into my soul, and I saw nothing. There was nothing inside of me. I wasn't a father, I wasn't a son, I wasn't a worker, I wasn't a man. There was nothing. I was an empty shell, and I got really scared.
Scared enough that he actually entered rehab and later saw a psychiatrist who diagnosed his anxiety disorder and depression.
Mental health and addiction are, to me, lifetime diseases.
Today, Jeff works as an alcohol and drug counselor. In his spare time, he indulges in hobbies he never got the chance to enjoy as a child.
When I was a little kid, really wasn't there. I mean, I didn't have time to really enjoy because I was in fear so much.
He's also repaired the relationship with his children.
I had a lot of shame when I first got sober about raising them as an alcoholic. Our relationship has morphed into a very, very close, very, very loving relationship.
But the biggest anchor in Jeff's recovery is his spirituality. He says he relies on it daily to resist his addiction and manage his fears.
I'll sit and I'll read my Bible, a chapter of the Bible. I'll use this little hand cross that my daughter gave me. You can see it's worn, and you just hold it like this while you're reading, and then I will pray for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever I have. But mostly it's asking blessings for others. I don't ask for things for myself because to me, I'm the richest man in the world. I am blessed. Most amazing is that I have a brain that can put together a full sentence after all the destruction that I put myself through. But I also believe that every step I took when I was younger led me to this point. If my story helps just one person, certainly, I'm humbled by that, and that is what I try to do today.
Are you okay? I'm having a hard time breathing. Has this ever happened to you? What? I don't even know what's happening.
This isn't a real anxiety attack. It's a simulation, and it's part of a training session called Mental Health First Aid.
So much more concerned right now, but I don't know what.
We all get the concept of first aid in a physical crisis. Take basic steps to help until a professional gets to the patient. Mental health first aid is no different.
All of a sudden, these things started to build and build and build, and now my head's racing, and I'm having a hard time breathing, catching my breath. Mental Health First Aid is a public education program that really focuses on educating the general public in helping them to better understand the signs and symptoms of common mental illnesses. An anxiety disorder is more severe, it lasts longer, and it interferes with a person's work and relationships. As a mental health first aider, your role is not to diagnose or be a professional clinician. Our role is to simply, if you feel comfortable, start a conversation with the person and ask them how they're doing, and then support them and try to direct them to professional support.
Mental health first aid consists of an 8-hour in-person training session. The program originated in Australia in 2001, and it's been offered here in Western Pennsylvania since 2010.
And I'd say in the last 3 years, we've averaged about 100 trainings a year. And we have over 100 trainers from different agencies in our area.
The training is based on a 5-step action plan.
ALGEE. Essentially, what it involves is first assessing the situation and the person for risk of suicide or harm, listening non-judgmentally. When engaging a person, you want to make a connection. You want to, give reassurance and information, which just is reassuring the person that they're going to be okay, that maybe what they're experiencing is a treatable illness. And then you want to encourage appropriate professional help and really encourage that they follow up. Lastly, you want to encourage self-help and other support strategies.
And I'll stay with you until somebody comes.
Staying with, thank you. I don't even know you, but you're really helping me. It's something that anybody can do. And I think when they leave that room, they are better prepared to have more compassion and empathy. And at the end of the day, after training, I feel great. I thought everybody did a great job, so let's give yourselves a round of applause.
Mental Health First Aid is just one of the community resources made available by the local chapter of NAMI. That stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Christine Michaels is the executive director.
We have a tendency as adults that if somebody looks different or isn't, quote, normal, we back away. One of the things that we work for at NAMI is to create a culture of compassion and understanding.
NAMI serves more than 4,000 families and mental health professionals annually in our region, connecting people to community resources. They also work to break the stigma attached to mental illness.
Nobody quite wants to say, oh, I think I have a mental illness. They do basically suffer in silence for a long time because they're afraid to reach out.
But for people with anxiety disorders, it doesn't have to come to that. Help is available.
There are many, many people who are living with a serious mental illness, living good lives, married, have jobs, have houses, have the American dream.
People like Jeff and Jennifer and Chuck and Kai, who found ways to break the cycle of anxiety and finally find peace of mind.
You won't have to feel guarded all the time. You can feel free. My whole thing right now is just, I want to feel free.
It all came full circle of me that I had a mental illness, and I wasn't a bad person trying to be good. I was a sick person trying to get better.
I felt it was something to be ashamed of, but come to find out that I could learn to live with it.
It's easy to have peace of mind when it's smooth sailing and the waters are calm. It's not so easy to have peace of mind when the anxiety is trying everything to not let you have that. So peace of mind for me is when I sort of conquer the illness and when I can say, you know, I win, you lose, and I'm able to get through that.
About the people and resources featured in this program at WQED.org/mental illness.
Bundle of Nerves, Our Anxiety Epidemic is made possible by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield.
For more than 75 years, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield has been committed to creating stronger, healthier communities through corporate grants, sponsorships, and program support. Learn more at highmark.com/community impact.